Hello again. What I'm going to do next is a sequence of videos on the Layla album, which, as you know, is that. It's 50 years old. Um, it's an album that stands alone, I think, in rock and roll music. I'm not going to go through the melodrama and the soap opera behind it. We all know the story behind it. We all know the story. And we also know the sort of parallel, the story of Layla and Majnun, which is a Persian tome. And it's an album that seems to be driven by what was happening in their private lives. It's also an album that's got a lot of tragedy about it. Duane Allman died a year later, and there was tragedy up around the bend for Carl Radle eventually, and Jim Gordon. So there's only Eric and Bobby Whitlock still with us. There was no, Layla Part 2, which is maybe a good thing. There was no Derek and the Dominoes live, because Duane Allman went back to the Allman Brothers. Now, the story of Duane playing with them, and forgive me if any of these anecdotes are wrong, because it's 50 years ago, and I'm using a whole bunch of sources, like the Studio Master dates, and it's a great book about Duane. People's memories fade over the years. People contradict each other. But one thing I think is well known is they were going to record it in Muscle Shoals after Eric's solo album. That's a solo album that's quite surprising to a lot of people, and it was commented at the time there's hardly any guitar in it. There's loads of guitar in it. There's tons of guitar in it. Maybe slightly different to Cream, but there's a lot of guitar in it. And the lineup would be Bobby Whitlock, keyboards and vocals, Eric Clapton, guitar and vocals, Carl Radle on the bass, and Jim Gordon on the drums. And when it was known that they were coming to Muscle Shoals to record it, Duane Allman, who was a session guy and also guitarist in the Allman Brothers, had said to Tom Dowd, "Can I come and watch them play?" He was, "All right, I really like Eric Clapton, can I come and watch them play?" And when Tom Dowd went to okay it with Eric Clapton, he had obviously said, "Come and watch us play nothing and get him along to play." They'd gone to see an Allman show. The two of them, Eric and Duane, had become acquainted and formed a sort of brotherly bond or mutual respect or whatever. And the album kind of floats on this incredible two guitar energy. I mean, the pair of them, it's absolutely at the top of their game for both of them, and it's very honest. I mean, there's an incredible bit on Key to the Highway where Eric's wailing away in typical Eric style, and after a couple of verses, Duane starts playing on the slide, and you can hear Eric Clapton like moaning and grunting like he's never heard anything this good in his life. It really is an album that has this two guitar chemistry. It's got to go down as one of the two guitar albums of all time. And as I say, there's an aura of tragedy about it, but there's an aura of absolute magic about the record. I mean, there's a really nice conversation on Saturday night. It was kind of when I said I was going to do this, and a whole lot of friends and Facebook friends joined in a conversation about the album. People were saying it's my favourite album. Somebody suggested best rock album of all time. Everyone, from who's in my tribe, if you like, we've all got an opinion on it, and we pretty much all love it. You listened to it 50 years ago, and you're still listening to it now. There was no second album because Duane Allman went back to the Allman Brothers and tragically was killed a year later. There's no live version of the 5-piece band playing their stuff that is a live album, and it's that, and it's great. It's really, really good. And that is Carl Radle, Jim Gordon, Bobby Whitlock, Eric Clapton. So they've got one member more than say Free or Led Zeppelin. They've got one voice more. But every time I listen to that, much as I like it, it seems like there's a Duane-sized hole in the middle of it. It just seems like there's something missing. Maybe because we know the Layla album. It's also an album that's been remixed and remastered, and this is a pile of Layla CDs. That one, that's the one that came out and was the subject of much complaint because people who'd bought CD players felt it wasn't hi-fi enough for their CD player. It sounds really good to me. So it was then replaced by a kind of pseudo box set with the Johnny Cash show, outtakes and stuff. And then there's a 3 CD box that came out that's got all the jams. There's one track with Dickie Betts, for example, and the same bunch of outtakes. Now, one of the myths or legends about Layla, and you know, I've seen this said by Bobby Whitlock and Tom Dowd, is that the songs were recorded in order. You know, the first thing they did was I Looked Away, the last thing they did was Thorn Tree in the Garden. But there are things that would kind of contradict that. The studio notes on the box set contradict that completely, but there are now people who contradict the studio notes. But as a best guess, one thing I think may have happened is I think they may have all met, played together a bit in the studio. One of the jams has Dickie Betts on it. I think they may have recorded Key to the Highway. And again, another anecdote is Key to the Highway. They were playing this Big Bill Broonzy blues song, and Tom Dowd had come in, heard them playing, and you know, had obviously looked accusingly at the tape op and said, "You are recording this, you know, press record now." So it fades in because it would come in like in the middle of a verse. They fade it in and it just gives it this aura of a late night jam. So I think it's possible that was the first song, Key to the Highway. Just my guess. Then Dwayne went back to the Allman Brothers, and as a 4-piece they recorded the 3 songs that Dwayne's not on, which would be I Looked Away, Bell Bottom Blues, Keep On Going. Dwayne comes back and they do Nobody Knows You, When You're Down and Out, and then right through to the end of Thorn Tree in the Garden. It's always a surprise, I think, to some people when you say, you know, well, that bit was actually Dwayne who played that. You know, that bit obviously was Eric Clapton. Pardon me, we never really know. I mean, you get a 2-guitar album, unless it's listed in the credit, it's very hard. You know, we know that Dwayne wrote. You know, that's Dwayne's line. We know that Dwayne played Any Day. That's a Dwayne solo. We know that Dwayne solos all over Why Does Love Got to Be So Bad, as does Eric. But I think it is a surprise to a lot of people that the harmonies, for example, on I Looked Away, are Eric overdubbed many times. The dueling guitars that are in a state of frenzy on Keep On Growing, both parts are Eric, because the first 3 tracks, as I said, is just a 4-piece band, and then it's Dwayne right to the end. So it's an album, you know, if we ever get out this lockdown and, you know, you could sit and have a beer and talk about for hours and hours and hours. And it's always in everybody's, you know, top 10 albums of all time, Layla. You know, it's always there. And as you know, men like to make lists. So, as I said, I've done north of 150 of these guitar videos, and I kind of thought it'd be a good idea to do a whole bunch that would kind of have a theme to tie it together. That is from the one album, which would be Layla. I'm not trying to prove a point or anything, and if anyone watches it and go, "Oh wow, I've always wanted to learn to play that song, there's all the licks, there's all the chords," then that's great. And if anyone says, "I think you played that bit wrong," I think, you know, that's how we learn. That interaction is how you learn. So I certainly wouldn't mind if anyone said, "That story you told is inaccurate because that chord that you played there is not what I think it is. I think it's this." As I say, that's how I learn. So, first one up is obviously going to be I Looked Away, because I'm going to adhere to the, you know, they were recorded in sequence. So, let's go.